Recap Tales of Herding Gods, Chapter 435, Chapter Kongur. Chin Mu suppressed the turmoil rising within his heart and slowly shifted his gaze away from Granny C's body. As his eyes moved across the heavens, he saw Butcher standing upon a heavenly star, his knife resting in his hand. His figure stood tall and robust like a mountain of iron. The twin knives were held side by side before him, yet his body remained utterly motionless, as though frozen within the stillness of time itself. Chin Mu's gaze drifted again, and he saw Hermit Ching Yu. The old hermit held a horsetail whisk, which rested lightly beside his elbow. He sat cross-legged in a tranquil lotus posture, and the seat beneath him was none other than a star suspended in the firmament. Next, Chin Mu saw Mute standing upon a blazing fire star among the great overarching heavenly stars. Chin Mu's heart trembled violently, and blood surged toward his throat so fiercely he nearly spat it out. With great effort he forced his gaze to shift again, and this time he saw the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The man sat solemnly upon the earthquake cauldron, and beneath that cauldron lay one of the stars of the great overarching heavenly stars. Chin Mu then turned his gaze away from his own body and looked toward the others. Rat Immortal and Fox Immortal were there, along with the rest of the companions. Cripple had carried Apothecary, whose body was still bleeding, to sit upon one of the stars as well. Blind stood with his head lowered, leaning quietly upon his bamboo cane. Beneath his feet too rested a star. Old Ma resembled a serene Buddha statue. Death grasped a writing brush within his hand. Queen Yi clutched her winged blade, and King Kun still bore the horn upon his head. All of them had been drawn into the constellation of the great overarching heavenly stars that had erupted from Granny C's palm. Each and every one of them stood upon a star. "Where is Sister Jing? Why isn't she here?" Chin Mu hurriedly turned his head and scanned the surroundings, desperately searching for any trace of Yan Jingjing. Even the sun ship, it couldn't possibly block the gods of the high heavens, could it? At that moment, a beam of brilliant light swept across the sky, and Chin Mu saw a sun drifting in the heavens. Half of it was darkened in shadow, and only when it slowly rotated did its radiant light fall upon them. The sun ship was unimaginably vast. Even if its enormous body was hidden behind a towering mountain peak, sunlight could still faintly spill out from the other side. Yet the sunship itself showed no movement whatsoever. No aura emanated from it. Chin Mu's heart sank abruptly. At that moment, Hulinger spoke softly beside him. "Young master, I cannot see Yellow Immortal or Tuxing Feng." Chin Mu steadied his mind and continued surveying the surroundings. Divine rays shot from his eyes as his gaze pierced through the air. He saw a god standing directly behind Granny C, two fingers joined like a sword as he aimed toward the back of her head. Yet that god, too, was frozen in place, unable to move even the slightest bit. Soon after, Chin Mu saw the flower sovereign of the high heavens. She was a divine woman with blossoms blooming beneath her feet. The flowers filled the sky as though they had grown from the heavens themselves. She stood upside down upon one of those blossoms, as though walking across the sky, while launching an attack against the great overarching heavenly star force field. Yet she too was completely frozen, unmoving like a statue carved from time itself. Chin Mu then noticed a third god floating high above the sunship. His claws were stretched forward as though reaching to strike someone aboard the ship. Yet he too was frozen motionless within the air. Chin Mu cast his gaze farther into the distance and saw many more gods of the high heavens. They were captured in all manner of poses, each seemingly caught in the midst of fierce combat. Not a single god could move. Are they dead? Chin Mu tried to calm his mind, yet he found it nearly impossible. The sight before him was simply too strange and unsettling. Everyone stood completely still, as though time itself had ceased to flow. Yet if time had truly stopped, how were Chin Mu and the others still able to move freely? "Your Majesty, they should still be alive," the divine Flood Dragon King suddenly said. "I can still sense their aura. Their breathing is long and faint. Only a handful among them have already lost their breath. What is strange is that their primordial spirits are no longer within their bodies. It appears as though those spirits were forcibly pulled out." Chin Mu was slightly stunned. Their primordial spirits were pulled out of their bodies? The divine Flood Dragon King nodded slowly. There are no primordial spirits remaining in these bodies. Judging from the positions of Granny C and the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, I believe they must have formed some type of primordial spirit formation. When their divine arts erupted all at once, the primordial spirits of everyone present were forcibly dragged from their bodies. If my guess is correct, their injuries must have been so severe that they had no choice but to battle using only their primordial spirits. Chin-Mu released a long breath of relief, and the tight knot within his heart loosened slightly. They are not dead. They are simply fighting with their primordial spirits. Divine Flood Dragon King, you are far more knowledgeable in such matters. Do you know where their primordial spirits have gone? The speed of a primordial spirit is extremely fast. In a single instant, it can travel tens of thousands of miles through the boundless void. Therefore, their primordial spirits should not remain here. As for where they have gone, that is something I cannot determine. Chin-Mu fell silent. After a brief moment, he spoke again, his voice strained and hoarse. Which among them have already lost their breath? The Divine Flood Dragon King pointed toward Apothecary, then toward Cripple, Deaf, King Kun, and Rat Immortal. Chin-Mu's heart grew heavier with each name. There are also several gods of the high heavens who have lost their breath as well. Their primordial spirits must have lost the battle, the Divine Flood Dragon King murmured in a low voice. Chin-Mu's expression darkened. Rising into the air, he flew toward the sun ship. Upon arriving, he saw that everyone aboard the vessel was frozen motionless. It was now obvious that when Granny C and the others had unleashed their primordial spirit formation, the primordial spirits of everyone in the surrounding region had been drawn away, whether they were mortal cultivators or mighty gods. Young Master. Hulinger looked at Chin-Mu's expression and felt unease spreading through her heart. Young Master, they will not die. Chin-Mu closed his eyes briefly before opening them once more with unwavering resolve. Divine Flood Dragon King, lend me your power. I will borrow the magic power of a god and perform Soul Guide. As long as their souls have not been extinguished, I will summon them back. The Divine Flood Dragon King hesitated before replying. Young Master, your corporeal body may not be able to withstand my magic power. I am not like these flood dragons. I am a true god. Your divine bridge, divine treasure can endure borrowing the power of the flood dragons. But if you borrow my magic power, your divine bridge, divine treasure will likely shatter. After all, your divine bridge itself is broken. I said lend it to me, so lend it. Chin-Mu declared firmly. The Divine Flood Dragon King sighed helplessly and gently placed down the corpses of Old Dao Master, Old Rulai, and the others. Your Majesty, I will transform into a massive dragon and coil along your backbone to support your corporeal body so it does not explode under the pressure. However, I cannot protect your divine treasures. If you find that you cannot endure the strain, speak immediately, and I will withdraw my magic power. Do it! The Divine Flood Dragon King's enormous body rapidly shrank until it transformed into a sapphire blue flood dragon 3 yards long. The dragon clung tightly to Chin-Mu's back and gradually faded away, becoming a sapphire blue dragon marking across his back like an ancient tattoo. Chin-Mu activated the secrets of dragon control and instantly borrowed the magic power of the flood dragons. Explosive sounds erupted from his body as the 7 stars divine treasure, celestial being divine treasure, life and death divine treasure, and divine bridge divine treasure all awakened simultaneously. The magic power of the flood dragons surged like an ocean, filling his divine bridge divine treasure to the brim. Then Chin-Mu guided the magic power of the Divine Flood Dragon King. In an instant, the boundless force of that divine power shattered through the limits of the divine bridge, divine treasure, and surged straight toward the celestial heavens. Chin-Mu's primordial spirit was carried by that overwhelming magic power as it crossed the divine bridge and reached the other shore. The raging force lifted him upward toward the celestial palaces. Yet the magic power of the Divine Flood Dragon King was still insufficient to propel him completely into celestial heavens. His ascent halted at the southern heavenly gates, which could only be considered barely entering the realm. Your Majesty's divine bridge, it is not broken. The Divine Flood Dragon King was utterly shocked, but at that moment, Chin-Mu summoned forth the immense magic power surging within him, Cryptic, devilish syllables flowed from his lips as he performed the spell of Soul Guide. This was a spell originating from the Nine Spectres sect. Within the Eternal Peace Empire, it was not regarded as a remarkable divine art, yet it had once stirred tremendous upheaval across the land. When Chen Mu had first entered Imperial College to study divine arts and techniques, he had not chosen those famed for overwhelming power. Instead, he had chosen Soul Guide and the Ghost Transferring Gods Dispatching Runes command. He had felt that these two spells were mysterious and could unleash power far beyond imagination. The Ghost Transferring Gods Dispatching Runes command had been left behind in the Eternal Peace Empire by the Duchen Devil King, who had intended to use it to seize territory for his people's future homeland. The origin of Soul Guide, however, likely did not lie with the Nine Spectres sect. It was far beyond what that sect could have created. The spell seemed connected to Yudu, and Chen Mu had long suspected that it originated from that shadowy realm. It was a spell belonging to the soul arts of Yudu. Unfortunately, his understanding of the language of Yudu remained incomplete, and he knew little about the mysterious Yudu world. Thus, he had never been able to develop the spell to its ultimate limits. Even so, his mastery of Soul Guide had already surpassed anything the Nine Spectres sect had demonstrated in the past. Gate of Heaven Influence, open, Chen Mu shouted. Behind him, a terrifying gate suddenly burst into existence. His magic power surged violently, causing the Gate of Heaven Influence to grow to an enormous size. The twin doors of that gate, each hundreds of yards tall, slowly creaked open. Beyond them lay the Yudu world within endless darkness. Devil Chi poured out in rolling waves, invading the night of the great ruins and releasing an aura that caused even ghost gods' hearts to tremble. Divine arts practitioners of the Nine Spectres sect were incapable of cultivating the Gate of Heaven influence. They could only borrow Soul Guide to open lesser gates that connected to the Gate of Yudu. But Chen Mu was different. The Gate of Heaven influence he cultivated was the genuine article. The moment the gate opened, the power of Soul Guide erupted. Countless faintly glowing runes shot into the depths of Yudu, illuminating a pathway through the darkness. That glowing path resembled a floating bridge stretching endlessly into the abyss. Moments later, the surrounding mountains trembled as rocks overturned. Skeletons tunneled upward from beneath the earth, dancing and waving their limbs with wild joy. Across the Eternal Peace Empire and the great ruins, the ground bulged continuously. Corpses and skeletons of every kind burst from the soil. Their mouths opened and closed, yet no sound emerged. Chen Mu frowned. More and more souls were being guided out of Yudu by his spell. Yet although they belonged to countless life forms that had died nearby, none of them were the souls of Apothecary, Cripple, or the others. They are not in Yudu? Chen Mu clenched his teeth and roared in fury. No matter who took you away, I will find you. The Gate of Heaven influence suddenly expanded further, and the power of Soul Guide surged even more violently. Grandpa Apothecary, return your soul to me. Fengdu lies just ahead. Within the realm where the living and the dead intertwined, a bird-headed mutant led a group forward. He spoke to Apothecary, Cripple, and Deaf. Your old friend is waiting for you upon the Bridge of Helplessness. Old friend? Apothecary looked bewildered. Which old friend? The bird-headed god smiled faintly. You will know when you arrive. When they reached the Bridge of Helplessness, Apothecary, Cripple, and the others froze in astonishment. Standing at the center of the bridge was the village chief, his body strong and uninjured. Everyone, he said warmly, we meet again upon the Bridge of Helplessness. You are still. Before he could finish speaking, black fog beneath the bridge churned violently. A massive whirlpool formed below them. From its depths came an enraged roar. Grandpa Apothecary, return your soul to me! Apothecary, Cripple, and the others suddenly felt the world spin wildly around them. The strange force dragged them violently into the whirlpool. They were pulled downward into the depths, completely unable to resist. An angry shout erupted from Fengdu itself. Which demon dares to cause chaos within my Fengdu? King Yama's colossal figure slowly rose upward. He gazed down into the whirlpool, and within its depths he saw Chen Mu's face. King Yama froze in astonishment. Translator Ninetails, Editor Dark Gem. Within Fengdu City, gods and devils streaked across the firmament like shadows cast by lightning. They gathered around King Yama and gazed down toward the bridge below. The instant their eyes fell upon the swirling vortex beneath it, their expression shifted drastically. Many were about to act, divine might already stirring in their palms. Yet King Yama slowly lifted his hand and spoke with solemn authority. "There is no need. Let him go." The gods and devils of Fengdu City were filled with bewilderment. The divine art beneath the bridge clearly originates from Yudu. Those from that place have come to our Fengdu to snatch away our people. How can we possibly tolerate such insolence? Another god stepped forward and added grimly, "If Yudu continues to cause chaos like this, we will soon be unable to maintain control of Fengdu at all. King Yama, let us strike against Yudu." King Yama slowly shook his head. When he spoke again, there was something strangely distant in his voice. "The one who used that divine art of Yudu is neither a god nor devil of Yudu. Instead, he is a guest from Carefree Village. I have seen that face before. It bears a striking resemblance to that person. There is no need to pursue the matter further." Beneath the vast cape of darkness that cloaked him, his gaze glimmered faintly like a candle burning in a tomb, radiating a ghostly glow. "A person from Carefree Village has appeared. I had waited for the old swallow of the previous dynasty to return, for old dreams to rebuild their nest once more. Yet what can be done if a new swallow arrives in place of the old? It is the season when the swallows I once knew return. Whether old or new, it is difficult to tell the difference." Village chief said. King Yama lowered his head and looked down at him. His dark cape fluttered high in the sky above Fengdu City, and then his figure drifted away into the distance. Village chief gazed down from the bridge and released a long sigh. "I had thought I might reunite with Apothecary and the others, yet Chenmu summoned them back instead. I wonder if their corporeal bodies have died or not. If they truly have, then we will still meet again here in Fengdu." "Master, what river flows beneath the Bridge of Helplessness?" "According to legend, its source lies within Yudu. We call it the River of Forgetfulness." The human emperor who had come before his master stepped forward to stand beside him and look down upon the flowing waters. "There are countless stories tied to this place, far too many to recount in a short span of time. The river is filled with monsters, creatures from Yudu itself, beings of dreadful terror. The powerful practitioner who used the divine art of Yudu to seize those people found his path here through the River of Forgetfulness. You should be very familiar with that person, correct?" He studied Village Chief's face, and his gaze flickered slightly. "You were closest to him, yet when you heard his voice, you did not move to stop him." Village Chief nodded. A trace of pride colored his voice as he replied, "He is my disciple, the current human emperor. What do you think, you old bastard? The disciple I chose is better than the disciple you chose, isn't that right?" "Bah, wasn't the disciple I chose you, you idiot? Old bastard, die!" Within the great overarching heavenly star's force field, Apothecary crippled King Kun and the others abruptly opened their eyes. "Damn it, my corporeal body has already died. I can no longer protect my primordial spirit." Death suddenly exclaimed. King Kun and Rat Immortal also awakened, and their expressions immediately changed drastically. Their primordial spirits had been separated from their corporeal bodies for far too long, and as a result, their physical forms had begun to decay. The reason the divine Flood Dragon King had noticed that they possessed no breath was precisely because their corporeal bodies had already perished. "Muir, how long can you endure?" Apothecary rose hastily and pulled out a wide assortment of herbs and silver needles. Anxiety filled his face. "If you can hold on just a little longer, I can extend our lives and restore our corporeal bodies." Chenmu stood before the gate of heaven influence, continuing to borrow the strength of the flood dragons and the divine Flood Dragon King to sustain the soul guide technique. "Grandpa Apothecary, do not worry. I can hold on for several days and nights." "There is no need for that much time." Apothecary produced a beehive and said, "First I will use soul termites to link our corporeal bodies and primordial spirits together. After that, I will nourish the bodies with poison. The poison will sever the connection between our primordial spirits and both Fengdu and Yudu. Then I will raise life substitution insects to die in our stead." He tossed the beehive into the air. It floated upward as it rapidly expanded in size. Within it were insect eggs and strange seeds of various shapes and sizes. The insects inside the milky white eggs were each different from the others. Apothecary swiftly began cultivating poison and refining medicine. His fingers danced across everyone's bodies with mysterious and unpredictable techniques. Soon afterward, the sound of heartbeats began echoing faintly from within their bodies. Apothecary then quickly used silver needles to pierce points all over them. Death stared nervously at one of the insect eggs. Yet in the very next moment, Apothecary pinched open his mouth and stuffed the egg directly inside. Death's face immediately turned deathly pale. Apothecary quickly dug several holes in the ground and planted a few of the seeds. Within moments, the seeds sprouted and enormous buds pushed their way out of the soil. The flowers slowly swirled as their petals spread outward. "Everyone, enter the flowers." Everyone followed his command. Cripple asked, "Doctor of the martial world, what exactly is this flower of yours? It feels fleshy to the touch." Apothecary's face was tense. "They are not flowers. They are life substitution insects. Do not move. Let them swallow you." Life substitution insects? Everyone was slightly stunned. The giant flowers suddenly contracted as their petals closed inward, wrapping everyone tightly within. Those flowers were indeed not flowers at all, but rather a bizarre species of insect. After swallowing everyone, their forms began to twist and distort. Gradually, a head formed, then 4 limbs, and finally a body. Their appearances became identical to the people they had devoured. Chen Mu stared in astonishment. He could clearly recognize King Kun, Apothecary, and the others, and he could find no flaw whatsoever. Yet what made it truly strange was that the insects possessed everyone's aura. They even imitated their souls and primordial spirits with uncanny precision, making it impossible for others to detect any difference. What was even more bizarre was that Apothecary and the rest began aging rapidly. In an instant, their hair turned white. Within the blink of an eye, they aged from middle years to their later years, and from their later years to the very end of their lives. Moments later, Apothecary and the others had exhausted their lifespans. Their bodies collapsed onto the ground without breath remaining, leaving the earth covered in corpses. Chen Mu dispersed the Soul Guide technique. Peculiar auras surged from unknown directions. From the depths of space, darkness rolled outward as lamps suddenly lit up within it. Paper boats drifted across the void. Elders stood upon them, raising their lamps toward the corpses of Apothecary and the others. Their souls floated out slowly, their expressions blank and without awareness. They stepped onto the paper boats one by one, following the faint glow of the elders' lamps. The paper boats turned away. The messengers of death hung their lamps back upon the boats before sailing into the depths of darkness, and the strange auras gradually vanished. "That's good. The messengers of death have been deceived." Apothecary's voice suddenly came from beneath the ground. The earth bulged upward as fleshy insect sacs burst forth. Apothecary, Cripple, and the others emerged from them, their bodies coated in sticky liquid. Apothecary quickly removed the needles from everyone. Though they were still extremely weak, their primordial spirits remained slightly unstable. After examining them, Apothecary said, "Half of the soul termite is within the soul, and the other half remains inside the corporeal body. I must first stabilize your bodies and allow them to recover before I can fully revive you all. Unfortunately, I have already exhausted every spirit herb I carried with me. There is a pond of pure yang aboard the sunship that can rapidly restore life force," Chen Mu immediately said. "That will help greatly." Apothecary released a breath of relief. "Let us go soak within that pond of pure yang to recover our bodies. Those life substitution insects will not deceive the messengers of death for very long." Everyone hurried toward the sunship. Chen Mu was familiar with the place and quickly guided them to the pond of pure yang. Everyone entered the water, and their corporeal bodies gradually recovered. However, the water in the pond slowly began to diminish as well. When Chen Mu saw that everyone was no longer in danger, he asked, "Where did your primordial spirits travel to?" Rat Immortal released a sigh of relief and said, "During the battle, Sun Guardian brought her ship to support us. But the gods of the high heavens were truly formidable. They wielded numerous divine arts and god treasures of immense power. Big Sister and Second Brother died in battle, one after another. Sun Guardian herself was forced to retreat, leaving us in a dire crisis. Imperial Preceptor then activated the Earthquake Cauldron, intending to perish together with everyone. He injured all the gods with its tremors, but then something very strange happened. Qin looked at him with confusion before suddenly realizing something. He cried out, "The Earthquake Cauldron pierced through the barrier between another world and eternal peace?" "No." Cripple shook his head and replied, "The power of the Earthquake Cauldron was absorbed by the God-broken mountain range." Qin froze in shock. "When I saw that scoundrel Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bringing out the Earthquake Cauldron, I immediately knew something was wrong. So I dragged Apothecary away to escape for our lives. That's why we were slightly farther away from the blast. Death was much closer to it, so let him explain." Death removed his 2 iron ears and washed them carefully within the pond of pure yang before inserting them back into his ear holes. "When the power of the Earthquake Cauldron erupted, I also realized disaster was coming. I planned to hide within the world of the painting so I could escape unharmed. Yet I never expected the power of the Earthquake Cauldron to be so terrifying. I failed to escape in time, and the painted world was completely destroyed. At that moment, an unimaginable force suddenly surged forth from the God-broken mountain range and absorbed the power of the Earthquake Cauldron. Then a vast hole appeared between heaven and earth, and beyond that hole lay another world. At that time, they had been locked in a fierce battle. An Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had acted without regard for the consequences, frightening everyone nearly out of their wits. Yet the enormous change that occurred within the God-broken mountain range had allowed them all to escape unharmed. They had no time to investigate the situation within the other world before battle erupted once more. The abilities of Flower Sovereign and Star Sovereign Chiao were simply far too powerful. None of them could stand against them. Flower Sovereign went directly to attack the Sun Ship, planning to kill Yan Jingjing, and the situation became extremely dire. Granny C realized the danger and gathered everyone together to form the great overarching Heavenly Stars formation. She forcefully executed it and drew everyone's primordial spirits out of their bodies, preparing to wage a great battle using only their spirits. After that, we entered a strange world. Death seemed slightly dazed as he spoke. Beneath the God-broken mountain range, there was a strange world. It should be. King Kun possessed greater experience, so he explained. The inner world of a god treasure. Death nodded. Within that place we were trapped and forced to fight endlessly. In the end, we were killed. After our deaths, we sensed a strange energy invading that world. Then we saw a god with the head of a bird flying toward us. He guided us to Fengdu, saying we would meet an old friend there. But just as we saw a village chief, you pulled us back, Mu'er. Village chief is in Fengdu? Qin was greatly astonished. Pain stirred within his heart, and he clenched his fist tightly. Village chief, I will definitely rescue you from Fengdu. Yet what was even more astonishing was that beneath the God-broken mountain range, an unknown power had blocked the force of the Earthquake Cauldron and even drawn everyone's primordial spirits into it. What exactly was that treasure? Why had it been buried there? Who had forged it, and who had hidden it in that place? The stone statues of the devil gods from the other world must be searching for that treasure. And the primordial spirits of Granny C and the others should still be inside that treasure. Just as Qin reached that thought, the ground suddenly trembled violently. In the distance, mountain rocks crashed downward as a massive stone statue rotated while breaking through the earth and rising upward. The devil god from earlier had discovered their location underground. At the same moment, tremors echoed from within the darkness. Qin turned his gaze toward the fog and saw numerous stone statues walking slowly in their direction. They have found that treasure. Qin expression changed drastically.